So every now and then a product comes along with the promise of shaking up the whole entire industry and the way people skate. Now we've had everything from, the first grind plates to anti-rockers, we've had the Moog frame to purple technology. And most recently, we have metal frames. Now just like with the unibody construction with the USD Aeon, metal frames are nothing new. Rossi's did it back in the day with the Impala 62. But sometimes it's a good idea to revisit old ideas through the lens of modern skating. Enter the Sola equipment street frame. Currently priced at $180 US, it promises an improved skating experience with a metal frame for better power transfer. You've got a thinner sidewall so you get more sole space out of it. Metal on metal grinding surfaces with rails and coping, so now you don't have to fight 40-year-old skateboarders at the skate park about wax. Along with, I believe, 3, maybe 4 now, different options for H blocks depending on what you want. I only have the Alumide blocks and I do like them, we'll get to that. But for that much money and with that much promise, are they actually worth it? Or are metal frames just kind of a flex? So let's start with the pros. Now, I skated these frames for about 2 months, basically the whole time I was taking a break from YouTube. And I had some mixed experiences with them. Overall, a great experience, but we'll start with the pros. And the first one is the power transfer. Now, when I first had these set up, I had them set up, of course, metal frame, but also with the famous 60mm wheels, which if you guys don't know, they're an aluminum core wheel. So you've got an aluminum frame against an aluminum core wheel, and the power transfer was insane. Skating bowls was a whole new experience. The amount of effort you had to put in to get around places was just so minimal. It was such an amazing experience. That setup for skating big parks or bowls or anything, you just cannot beat it. If I was doing that full time, if I was a competition skater, that would 100% be my setup. Now those famous wheels are expensive and I only have one set and I buy all of my gear. So I eventually swapped those out for these dead 58mm 92A. And even on a standard core, the power transfer is just so much better. The skating experience overall, just like skating point to point, carving around bowls, it is definitely a better experience.
Yeah, dude.
You definitely feel more response out of your skates than you would with a standard plastic frame. The second one is definitely when it comes to grinding on metal surfaces, coping, or rails in general. It definitely does require less wax. I don't want to say it requires no wax, but certainly on sole tricks, on the sidewalls, you might still want to wax certain stuff, especially if the rail's not broken in well. But especially on groove tricks, man, you will go flying. You need no wax. I totally get why Joe Atkinson does a bunch of front royales and whatever when he's carving around bowls, because you really don't need it. Metal on metal, especially with a really small surface area, they slide incredibly well. So I think my experience grinding coping and everything like that is pretty well in line with what's to be expected. What was unexpected for me was actually, I found I had the opposite experience of what I've heard when it comes to grinding on concrete. I skated a couple of different waxed concrete ledges and I found that actually when I was on the metal, when I was doing topside grinds, these things slid really well, like way better than I expected. I jumped onto it expecting to stick because I was metal on a ledge, but I found that topside grinds with these things were actually amazing. They slid incredibly smooth and really no issues at all compared to what I was expecting. Now, like I mentioned, I only have the one H block. I bought these secondhand. I probably would have never got them if I hadn't gotten them secondhand at a discounted price. Thank you, Matt, if you're watching this. Had a lot of fun with these, thank you. But the V2 flat groove, I thought it was great. Plenty of wheel bite protection, even with the thin sidewalls. As someone who skates flat primarily, I find that thicker sidewalls are actually what gives you wheel bite protection, not the chicken lips that come off H blocks like the Kaiser Fluid 5s that I'm skating now. Those mentally make you feel better, which goes a long way, but the actual wheel bite protection typically comes from the sidewall. But there was plenty of meat on the H block here and plenty of space between the wheels. I really had a couple of times getting wheel bite, but nothing crazy. Great groove, slides really well. At least the Alumi does. I hear that the plastic is even crazier. But yeah, great groove. And finally, the last pro, at least in my opinion, and it's probably a little silly, but the sound these things make, man. There's something about metal grinding on a surface that it's just so satisfying. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the performance, but it feels awesome to hop on a rail and just hear that gnarly metal on metal grinding sound. I don't know about you guys, but every now and then I go back and watch like old X Games or ASA videos, and something about the way the sound was captured or the way skates were made back then, whatever plastic they used, or if they were using more metal, but the sound of grinds is just unmatched. And these frames kind of bring back that nostalgia for me, that gnarly grinding sound. I love it. Let's get down to the real reason that people watch product reviews, and let's talk about the cons. Well, to start with, it's the inconsistent sliding. And what I mean by that is you've got two different surfaces you're grinding on when you're doing sole tricks. So you've got injected molded plastic, and then you've got a metal frame. And the metal frame is going to slide at one speed and the plastic is going to slide at another. I had a couple of times where I was skating a rail or a box and I was doing groove tricks, and the groove trick slid amazing. Then I did a couple top sides and the top slide slid really well because all my weight was on that metal frame. And then I went to do a true spin trick and my sole plates stuck like crazy. Now, is this the frame's fault? Absolutely not. But you know, you're skating metal frames, you think, I don't really have to wax stuff anymore. That's kind of the appeal of a metal frame. But then you do a true spin, you're backwards, you stick, you go flying, you smack your head off the floor. Luckily you're wearing a helmet, you walk away fine. Not necessarily a huge deal and not necessarily the frame's fault, but definitely don't stop bringing wax to your sessions. Just because you have metal frames doesn't mean that you're never gonna stick again. And even the metal frames, if you're skating a rail that nobody really skates, that rail's not broken in, you might even just stick on your grooves on that rail. I had it in the last episode I did where I was doing a back royale up on the big wall in the pool in Raleigh where, I mean, I was on the grooves, it should slide, and it just stuck. It just stuck because nobody ever skates it, that rail's not broken in, and no amount of metal on metal is gonna help that. Sometimes you're still gonna need wax. So the next con for me is kind of a funny one. It's one they list as a pro on the product specs, and it's the thin sidewalls on these. So like I mentioned earlier, I find that sidewalls are where you actually get wheel protection from. So having a thin sidewall can actually wind up getting wheel bite, and especially when you're doing, you know, budget, like pivoty switch ups. So, you know, it's not the type of skating I normally do. I normally get on a grind, I hold it to the end, and for that, these are amazing. But when you want to play around with switch ups, I just found that, you know, I started to get some wheel bite. It made me less confident. It made the skating experience not so pleasant. So for that type of skating, if you're into doing switch ups, might not be the best frame for you. I really didn't have a super great time trying to do switch ups on these. Grinding in them's fine. trying to do switch ups in them, not the best thing in the world. And the final con for me, and maybe it's because I'm getting old, but the shock that you get skating these if you do any sort of gaps or just even rolling down the road, all that road chatter is going straight into your foot. Now, since I skated these, Dead and Sola, I believe, or no, Sola and Muzzle have collaborated for the shock sheets. If you are gonna be skating metal frames, whether it's the Solas or the Kaisers, whatever you're doing, I would highly recommend purchasing those because my feet have never been so sore. My feet and my knees for the 2 months that I was skating these felt just horrible after long sessions. And that was another big reason, along with not feeling comfortable with switch ups. Those are the 2 big reasons that I moved to now skating the Kaiser Fluid 5s. Definitely be aware of that and maybe pick up the shock sheets from Sola and Muzzle. I believe they're available on the Dead store along with all your other favorite shops probably, but definitely check those out. And finally, one thing, I don't think it's a pro or a con, I kind of think it's just fluff marketing, but the additional sole space, I mean, I think it's like 2, maybe 4, probably not even 4 millimeters, but like 2 millimeters of extra sole space that they advertise you'll get with a thinner sidewall. And if you're missing your sole tricks by 2 millimeters, I just don't know. I just don't know that that's a real thing. I don't, maybe mentally it helps, but I don't think it actually helps anything. I don't get it. I don't get it. But overall, super positive experience with the Sola frames. I think they are a very specialty tool. Like I said, skating parks and skating bowls with these things were amazing. If and when I get a chance to go back to Woodward, these will definitely be in the bag and set up for certain applications. Definitely not a daily driver for me. It might be for you. But yeah, those are my takeaways from skating these for 2 months. I'll probably throw them back on again, but just not yet. I'm having a really good time skating the Fluid 5s. These are way more my style and they're a lot easier on my feet. So I'm gonna get back to it and I will catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.